So we're going to spend the rest of this afternoon digging in a little bit more to network action teams and coalitions and some of the work that we do as a network collaboratively. So there's two different segments to this. First, we're going to hear about some of the network action teams and the work that they've been doing. And then we're going to have a little break with some cookies. And then we're going to hear some pitches for new teams and have some time to chat about them. We're going to have some more interactive time this afternoon as well, and to think about moving forward on some of these ideas. So what is a network action team? Those of you who've been around EAN for a while have heard that term before, but maybe not all of you have. Network action teams and coalitions work to help Vermont rapidly, cost-effectively, and equitably reduce fossil fuels and greenhouse gas pollution. And each of the EAN network action teams is comprised of a wide variety of EAN members and public sector partners who collaborate to make progress on developing concepts and working towards their implementation. This is the moment where I have to say EAN is nonpartisan. We are not nonpartisan nonprofit organization. We don't engage in lobbying. We recognize that there is a wide variety of opinions on various topics in this room and in our network. And we host these network action teams and coalitions in our role of promoting open dialogue, which we are very happy to do. And obviously, our members and public sector partners regularly express their own views on different topics and opinions, and those views don't necessarily reflect the views of our whole network or of EAN as a nonprofit. So, with those caveats out of the way, I'm very happy we're going to hear from our Climate Workforce Coalition, and then Weatherization at Scale, and then Thermal Energy Networks, and we will leave a little bit of time, hopefully, to have a little bit of Q&A at the end. So for that Q&A, back to Slido. If you have some questions as these folks are presenting, go ahead and put them on Slido. So Climate Workforce Coalition, the three other co-chairs of that coalition are going to present: Gabrielle Stebbins, Will Schwartz, and Dylan Giambattista. They appear to you as Climate Workforce Coalition past, present, and future. I'm disappointed they didn't wear ghost outfits. But we will start with Gabrielle and then Will.
Great. Climate Workforce Coalition started in 2021. Like a lot of the network action groups, a few different people had a similar idea, which was looking at the level of goals and requirements in statute, and then connecting the dots to, well, do we have all the workers to actually make sure that we have all those heat pumps installed, all those buildings weatherized? A few different folks, including myself and Dylan Giambattista, were connected by Cara to start to look at what are the workforce needs here in Vermont for meeting our climate goals. So since 2021, and I am the ghost of past, we started off with communication and analysis, and then also looking at funding. We started off with, okay, what does climate workforce even mean? Because like a lot of sort of cross-market sectors, there isn't, there might be some folks who are accountants. There might be a very clear role, like a solar installer, but then there are also folks that are electricians. Are they a climate worker, or are they just an electrician? So really drilling down to figure out how we were defining the different roles, to then zoom out and get a high-level assessment of, if we're looking at X number of heat pumps in the comprehensive energy plan, how many installers do we need for that? So that was one of the things we spent the first year on, really digging into what is the scale of workforce needed. Again, not, any statistician would probably laugh at our results, but our goal was not to be perfect. Our goal was to provide a sense of scale of how far off we were, which is that graph on the right. We were pretty far off. And we also started, in terms of communication and analysis and funding, we worked with Efficiency Vermont to start to explore what a talent pipeline management project might look like. We also, it's not up here because this is an EAN slide, but as network members, many of us coming together, initiated several ideas for what we needed from the legislature to support workforce jobs and training opportunities in the climate arena. At the time, I was a state rep, and sitting behind me was the chair of the House Commerce Committee, so it was really helpful. I would just turn around and be like, how's that bill going? We did a phenomenal amount of work, and frankly, it was a very different day. 2020, 2021, we had ERA dollars, we had COVID dollars. The challenge on the House floor and the Senate floor wasn't so much it wasn't so much how do we pay for this. It was what is the vision of the policy? What are our values? Which was why the workforce conversation was really great, because who doesn't want to grow good paying jobs that don't necessarily require a PhD here in Vermont? So it was really wonderful to sort of work across the aisle with all different folks to advance so many of the initiatives that the network member teams of the Climate Workforce Coalition supported. EAN did not. In terms of employee-centered work, we, mostly Cara, researched and wrote the Climate Workforce Community Feedback and Findings Report, a lot of looking at grant dollars, going out and interviewing folks. What's stopping you from thinking about working in this area? Sometimes it was childcare, sometimes it was, frankly, working in an environment that was perhaps hostile to women. A lot of, not all, but certainly we did hear from some of the surveys that there were folks who would start in a certain area of maybe blower door testing or whatnot, and feel like they weren't quite welcome because of some of the jokes that were being said or whatnot. So really dug into, from an employee perspective, what would make these jobs resonate more for you? And if you did get training, how could we keep you there? We developed a bunch of materials for students and college and career navigators and a new information page on My Future Vermont. We also worked as a coalition team to really support the development of the Weatherization Training Center, which you will hear more about from Will. And in the employer side, we facilitated some webinars. We also worked with and supported the Vermont Sustainable Jobs Fund in developing a business training program. We also initiated a bunch of other opportunities to try and, to what the panel said earlier, try and get some funding for how we communicate about the job opportunities available in these fields. And lo and behold, it's really hard to get people to pay money for marketing. I guess unless you're Coca-Cola. But the number of times we went for grants or federal funding opportunities just didn't quite hit payday for those efforts, but really initiated a lot. And with that, I will pass it to the ghost of the present, Will.
So what is this coalition presently? This is a group of a lot of organizations who are out here with the same mission in mind, growing and improving the climate workforce. And to do this, there needs to be a space to collaborate, work together, to be a soundboard for each other's initiatives and ideas. And to ensure that this collaboration is ultimately serving who we want to serve, the Vermonters seeking work, the employers actually doing the work, we need to consistently ask ourselves a couple main questions. What is it that this group can do to serve current employees, job seekers, with knowing that these careers are going to be beneficial to them? What can this group do for employers to help them attract, train, and retain the best and the most skilled talent? How can we help them grow their businesses so that they actually have the capacity, the time, and the resources to do those things we mentioned? And then how can we communicate that these are meaningful careers, that there is a future here? How do we effectively analyze the constantly shifting ecosystem that exists around the climate workforce, and what funding is available, and what needs to be done to effectively utilize this funding? And in doing all that, we really want to empower our coalition, our network members, to do the great work that they do, but understand that there is space for them to come back to use as a soundboard. We have employee-centric organizations like Vermont Adult Learning and their Energy Works programs, their English language learning programs. We have Resource, with their construction, HVAC, weatherization, youth build programs, Vermont Works for Women, and all the great work they do with gender inclusivity and getting women in the trades. We have service memberships like VYCC and Serve and Learn. We have the View Center, thanks to OEO and Everblue, stands for the Vermont Innovation Efficiency Weatherization Center, gets folks trained up in building performance and weatherization. We have employer-centered work, Efficiency Vermont, VGS, BED, all working with their network groups, working to fund Vermont Sustainable Jobs Fund for another round of Tools of the Trade. We have Department of Labor and all their great work they do around the state with all employers, but also leading service collaboratives and the labor market information data that they provide to all of us. We have communication analysis. We have Veep over there, Sophia, all the great work they do with educating the public on energy efficiency and energy in general and what that means for the individual, the household, the community, the environment as a whole. We, of course, have UVM, Leahy Institute, and all the work they do. And then finally, EAN, Cara, bringing us all together, working with UVM to guide those students into projects around marketing, climate outreach campaigns, bring us all together here to speak around this, to network, to get a better understanding of who all else is operating in this ecosystem. And we continue to push forward in these efforts, and I will hand it to Dylan.
Hello. I'm here to speak with you today about Climate Workforce Coalition, the future, what it might look like. And I just want to reflect, we've all heard a panel discussion this morning about the state of play, right? And so when I think about the future and when we look back a few years hence, I'm sort of reminded of the Talking Heads song, Road to Nowhere. We know where we're going, but we don't know where we've been. I think that's how we will all be feeling. And for what it's worth, if you want to know my favorite Talking Heads song, it's actually Don't Worry About the Government. So I'll just leave you with that if you get a chance to listen to it. But looking to the future here, we should know, it's very clear, demographics in the region tell us workforce challenges are not going anywhere. And we think that there's a role for this discussion to continue into the future. There might be a temptation to say, well, if all these industries are competing for workers, why are we going to talk about these trades in the climate workforce? Fair. You know, we're all perhaps competing for the same workers in a very small, rapidly aging working pool. But at the same time, there's going to be a shift at some point, right? We're on the road to somewhere. We all know it. We have to make this change. And continuing this conversation, keeping stakeholders at the table, such as those that Will has mentioned, is going to be really important to ensure that we have the proper balance of folks, that there's an awareness of what's going on, and a shared sense of opportunity that we all have. So that's the opportunity as we see it. This coalition continues to spark the conversation. We got to keep talking if we're going to make it happen, even with all the changes at the federal level. We'll continue to foster that dialogue amongst stakeholders. And of course, there will be a point at which future action occurs. And the more that we have, that we've laid as a foundation, the quicker we will be able to build that up and make the change in the trades, in the occupations, and help folks understand that these opportunities are real, they're present, they're only going to grow. So that's a wrap on our presentation. Cara, you want to take it away here. I have no segue music for you. All right, there you go.
All right, thank you, Climate Workforce Coalition. Okay, well, Neil Lunderville comes up here to talk about weatherization at scale. He's right there.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Neil Lunderville. I'm president and CEO of VGS Vermont Gas. It's my day job. My night job is exploring weatherization and making sure that this remains one of the key strategies that we have to make Vermont energy more affordable, less emitting, and help Vermonters be more comfortable. I am joined by two great co-chairs in Richard Fazy from EFG and, of course, Cara Robicek, without whom we would not be doing any of the work. A common theme you'll hear among all network action teams, you'll hear now and into the future, because without Cara's work, it really wouldn't be possible. We started this Weatherization at Scale team back in 2020 as a pitch to all of you to say, what can we do together? Build a big coalition to wrap around the idea that we need to do more funding for weatherization in the future and not just continue with steady state. And we set out a very, very, very ambitious goal. We said that we wanted to, by the end of the decade, have 120,000 Vermont homes weatherized. Why did we want them weatherized? The benefits are clearly abundant. We've talked about them here today. But one of the most important ones, especially in this moment, starts with the fact that you cannot have real energy affordability without weatherization. It starts with weatherization. When we can get Vermonters to buy and consume less energy, we are helping them put money in their pockets every month. We are helping them reduce their greenhouse gas emissions and make their homes more comfortable, healthy, and livable. This is an evergreen strategy that we need to keep going every single year. We're benefited by the fact that Vermonters love weatherization. I mean, if you ask them, this is not an issue that's 50-50, even 75-25. It's like 9.5 Vermonters out of 10 love weatherization, and the only half Vermonter who doesn't is one who may not understand that really long word with a lot of letters. Because they really get this. They know that having a buttoned-up home is something that will really give them benefit. And we've seen that demand remains really high for weatherization, and the incentives have helped. So we've seen two things at Weatherization at Scale Coalition. We've seen that the incentives that have been offered in the last couple of years have done just what they're intended to do. People have been ringing the phone to get an audit done in their house and get weatherization jobs going. So demand has been high, the incentives have worked. We've also seen that with steady funding, which we've been able to do, that weatherization agencies and contractors have been staffing up to make sure that they have the crews available so the wait list doesn't extend ad infinitum, that it actually is achievable inside a time period where somebody wants to do the weatherization job. That's really important. We've been able to do this because of the legislature and the governor coming together around this issue and putting money in to weatherization. This has been a really critical element of this. The federal money that we had come in through IIJA and IRA funds was put into these programs, particularly into the WAP program, Weatherization Assistance Program, to help low and moderate income Vermonters weatherize. This has made all the difference in recent years, and I'll talk about that in just a second. But what we don't have yet, something that's really important to our network action team, is that we don't yet have the steady and scaled up funding for the future, particularly to meet our goals in this area. So one of the things we looked at in the last year in particular was what is really going on with funding. There's a lot of worry out there that we were going to have a big funding cliff that was just going to drop off really quickly. So the network action team dug into these numbers quite a bit. And what we found is that because of the work by the legislature and the governor to put money in, we actually continue to see weatherization funding grow over 26 and 27. But then, particularly for low income, through the Weatherization Assistance Program, that funding sort of drops off in 27. If we went one more year out on this graph, we'd see a really big drop off in 29. That's what we have to really focus on for the future. But we have been able to grow the numbers over the last couple of years because of this funding. And we see that. Now, this graph, I want to just set the stage for this graph. We've shown this a number of years. And that blue area represents the difference between the blue area and the light green area represents the gap to get from where our current projection is to where we want to go, 120,000 homes. I wish I could say that I think there's going to be a big slug of funding in and we're going to be able to close that gap in the next few years. That's going to be tough. But we've made real progress. If we look at this graph over the last few years, what we've seen is that every year we have been able to add new numbers. In fact, from last year to this year, we're on track to weatherize 2,000 additional homes by the end of this decade. That is due to the funding levels that we have had in weatherization. And if we want to continue to close that gap, we need to continue to fund weatherization as a priority. So that's where I want to close. I really want to look ahead as to what we're doing at Weatherization at Scale Coalition we need to make sure that we're helping work with policymakers, lawmakers to identify how we close that gap. Strategies to use the money that we have most effectively to be able to do more weatherization in Vermont. We also need to make sure that we're focused on narrow issues, that not really narrow issues, but are really important prerequisite issues like pre-weatherization. This is home remediation to get homes ready for weatherization, particularly for low-income Vermonters. This money's going to run out after 2026, or the funds are going to go way down. So that's something we can focus on in the year ahead is how we put more money into that. And certainly we need to keep our eye on the ball when it comes to federal funding. Federal funding, I think it's fair to say, is not safe. It is not certain. We have IRA funds that are funding our weatherization assistance program, but they could go away very quickly if, the stroke of a pen. So we got to be really careful to watch out for that. I want to close with 3 quick thanks. The first is to all of our Weatherization at Scale Coalition members, many of whom are here in the room today. The list is very long, and I don't have time to read them, but you know who you are, and we know who you are because you're already in the community doing this work. Thank you for that, and continue to be involved. As Cara said, if you want to join this, this is a very easy, just come to one of our meetings, talk about weatherization, have the passion for it. Second is I want to thank the lawmakers and administration officials who are here who have consistently pushed for weatherization, particularly Senator Bray, who's been a champion for weatherization year after year, and without whom we would not be where we are today with funding. And the last is just to call out here our button-up bear from our partners at EVT. We had a great press conference 2 weeks ago with the governor, Peter Walk, many others, Darren Springer. Jeff Wilcox was there, runs the Weatherization Assistance Program. One of our weatherization heroes. These programs really rely on folks who are in the trenches doing the work to keep the money moving. And Jeff Wilcox is an example, and there are many others. I know he's not here today. His colleague Robert is, Sarah Phillips, who led the OE office for many years. This is the work that goes month after month, year after year, decade after decade to make a difference. So we want to recognize and thank their efforts for all of us, for Vermont. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Neil. And now for our final Network Action Team, Thermal Energy Networks, Debbie New and Sam Lash.
Okay, so my name is Debbie New of Vermont Community Thermal Networks, and I'm here with...
Hi, all. Sam Lashley here, Central Vermont Regional Planning Commission.
So we are part of the EAN Network Action Team for Thermal Energy Networks. So I want to thank EAN and all of our team members. We've been going for 3 years. We are regional planners, town energy committee members, experts in networked energy, thermal energy and modeling, Vermont energy policy, and we have people from Efficiency Vermont, VEIC, and VGS working with us. So first, the team needs to make sure that you understand that when we talk about thermal energy networks, first of all, we often use the acronym TENS, but we are talking about ground source heat pumps and water in pipes. We're talking about using waste heat and heat that's recovered from wastewater and, of course, geothermal. These are local resources that put together create neighborhood scale shared infrastructure. So that's what we mean when we say TENS. You can learn more. Let me make sure that the slide's right. Yeah. You can learn more about our team at the link here and about thermal energy networks at the link to VCTN. So last year, we shared with you the toolkit that we as a team developed. It basically says where you can get started, how to identify opportunities, different ownership and financing models, and how to develop a project. So this toolkit is now in use across the country. People are using this in California, Colorado, Connecticut, and in between. And it is also being included as part of the curriculum in a course at MIT on thermal energy networks. So, more importantly, it's being used closer to home here in our communities and in the state of Vermont's new climate toolkit. So check it out there. This work has informed our work in Vermont communities. And I want to share with you a map of the places that are exploring thermal energy networks. All of those red pins are places where people are in conversation about it, people are exploring it, and they're also identifying viable projects that we're really working to advance. Now, here's another map of Vermont that shows the areas where thermal energy networks might be explored, where they might make sense. So these are our designated downtowns, intentional growth areas, and commercial and industrial parks. All of those places across that map are places where there's enough density and a diversity of thermal loads to make a thermal energy network possibly make sense. So we have a lot more potential than you, or in fact I, before I saw this map, might think. So we get to the question of why thermal energy networks, but what I want to share with you is why now. And we have 3 great reasons on 3 different levels. The first is that geothermal is favored by the current administration. It's related to the oil and gas industry and drilling. So happily, that extends to ground source heat pump systems. So there are still federal tax incentives at a base of 30% available. There is also still direct pay available to municipalities and nonprofits. And there is a new leasing provision that, like the leasing provision that launched the solar industry, is now available to ground source heat pump systems, which can mean no upfront cost. So, in our state, we not only have a law that allows municipalities now to own and operate thermal energy networks, we also have thermal energy networks in our plans. So it is part of the Climate Action Plan. It's being added to regional plans and town plans as well. And I was just at the VCAN conference and heard several people say, if it's in the plan, it's something we said we wanted to do and we need to do it. And of course, as we've been talking about today, we have urgent goals in the state where TENS can play an important role. In terms of affordability, they can provide the kind of durable, long-term, sustainable affordability. We can stop sending our thermal energy dollars out of state by using these local resources. In terms of housing, we know that shared infrastructure can help make projects happen, like with water and sewer. It can also happen with heating and cooling infrastructure. And in terms of resilience, the components of these systems are inside and underground, so that helps with the resilience, but we can also contribute to the resilience of our electric grid. More on that in a second. So this year, our team is focused on exploring 2 topics in particular and broadening the conversation. And this is where we want to invite you to join us. The first topic is the electric grid. We all know there's a lot going on here, and also, I want to share that thermal energy networks can have a key role to play. We want to explore this with you, with those of you who are focused on a resilient grid and affordable electricity. We want to get your input on how we can create affordable thermal systems that reduce the need for electric demand, especially at those expensive peak times. So, earlier this year, our team provided input on a new report on the value of thermal energy networks in Vermont. And this was commissioned by Building Electrification Institute. And I want to thank Kiara O'Loughlin, who is here from BEI with us today, for making this possible. The report details the way that thermal energy networks can bring value, but focuses on one of the most significant ways, being not just thermal energy, but electricity. So, TENS can be a tool for maintaining grid reliability and resilience. And here's a list of what's in the report. Some of the words that might stand out to you here are reduce peak, shift loads, add storage, demand response. Essentially, this report helps us understand how we can support the grid by using high-efficiency local thermal networks and saving electricity for where we really need it. So the second topic we're exploring is housing, and there's a lot going on here too. And thermal energy networks can have a key role to play here. We all know that with water and sewer, shared infrastructure can incentivize developers, can support more affordable projects, and create the kind of density we need for walkable, livable communities. It's also true of thermal energy networks. With the federal incentives that are available that I mentioned before, these actually apply to trenching for water and sewer pipes when thermal pipes are part of it. So that 30% can be available to all the infrastructure that goes in for new housing. And that's just one of the things that thermal energy networks can bring to us realizing our housing goals. So I want to give Sam a little bit of time to talk about what she sees as the potential for thermal energy networks and on the ground, from her on-the-ground perspective.
Thanks, Debbie. I also understand that I'm standing between you all and cookies, so I promise this will be fast. For those who know me and know I talk a lot, I mean it. I just want to share a few stories about some of the communities we're working with and what those conversations kind of look like. I think Debbie did already a great job saying what we're focusing on. We're focusing on some big topics, right? So grid resilience, housing, 30 to 40K more housing in the next few years. That's pretty short term. But then a lot of the time we've spent today also talking about single buildings, talking about building envelopes, talking about single systems. And there's a great opportunity here in TENS for overlap between those. So this is an overlap at the community scale, really. The community scale is where those things meet. I think the key thing here is in footprint. So talking with a smaller town outside Montpelier, right? They don't have any wastewater. They really want to support housing. They saw Act 181 and they said, okay, what are we doing? Here's our little village center. We really want a grocery store. We don't have one. We really want housing for folks to downsize and age in place. We really want to keep our schools open. We'd really like our coffee shop to have enough visitors to have a full day of hours, right? So those are some of the conversations that we enter. We talk about, okay, what does it look like for a small town to look at novel wastewater right now, right? And they're continuing these conversations. And they're not the only one. And I hear that and I say, the footprint for that grocery store, for that housing, overlaps with possible TENS, right? They want to connect these possible new centers with sidewalks, also an opportunity for TENS, right? So it's how do we integrate, as someone earlier was saying, our emissions goals, our goals around affordability of energy, and most importantly, our goals around Vermonters having clean, cool, and warm, comfortable, healthy spaces to live in with the main priorities of housing. And I think that's actually quite clear in the work that we're trying to do here. And there's opportunity to design some of these systems from the ground. I would say there's probably a larger bucket of towns that I talk with and that we talk with generally that are a little bit larger, but still would be small town Vermont. They have some existing wastewater. They're looking at expansions because they have several projects that are in the works by developers in their town. And so having conversations with them of how they can say, okay, well, we have a 6 sidewalk projects that we want to connect, all these folks with. We may be doing a wastewater extension over here, but we also have sort of a little economic area downtown over here. How do we support them? It's great because TENS can also be a lever for some of those folks. We're looking at, okay, so the brewery might be able to use the waste heat, right, from their extended wastewater inputs as an additional economic lever so they can continue to be part of the fabric of that community and so on. So I just think that there's a ton of examples and a ton of conversations that we're having with towns that when they really get into it, they know how to do these things. The reason why we're formed as municipalities and towns is to share infrastructure, right, and to make sure that everyone benefits from it. So it's just been extremely exciting, really, as part of this group to realize this conversation and to start looking at the feasibility of some of these projects on the ground. So I'll just say, really, stay tuned. And please join us. I really think the funding stacking required to do a project like connect new housing, several new housing developments with sidewalks and shared utility infrastructure, to do that and right now is pretty difficult. So come help us articulate that and help and support our communities to do it. And if you want to talk more about waste heat recovery or about the role that TENS can play in increasing the resilience of our grid, please come find me during cookies. Anything else, Debbie? All right.